Oh, remote sensing. All right. How about something that's just a point? Uh, how about I think the main GIS has sampling sites. Let's see. The reason I didn't want to is because the rasters are a different story. Just want to do which would be like, remind me when we get to that. That will happen. Okay, so back to the main GIS catalog. So I think if I just search for sample, let's see what they have for environmental data. So biologic and ecologic environmental data. So seabird nesting, vernal pool center points. I guess algal blooms. All right, let's go with vernal pool center points. So remember last time we clicked on that orange button, brought us to a portal page. Then we just download the shapefile from that button there. And again, we talked about how to unzip things. So just do extract to and then find your data folder, main GIS. And then you can either, yep, that's big data. You can go to your catalog and open that folder that you just dropped it into. And I reminded you, or I told you last week, when you go in here, if you already had ArcMap open, you're not going to be able to find it. I guess I can now, but a lot of times you have to right-click on it and say refresh, and then it will pop up. So I'm going to drag that in, and I'm going to right-click on it. If it doesn't show up anything, and a lot of times it's just zoomed into another place in the world that doesn't have your data on it, so you can just right-click and say zoom to layer. It still doesn't show much, but if I put on the one of these maps here, say the world imagery layer, then I can see that I'm looking at Maine at least. So one thing I might do is just open that, right-click on it, and say Open Attribute Table, and then if I just double-click on one of these nubs over here, or if I right-click on it and say Zoom to, it'll zoom me to one of these records of GIS data. So we'll go through kind of the basics of like symbolizing a polygon and a point and a line, which are the basic types of GIS data that you get in vector data, which is what we're going to mostly work with in this class. It just means basically what we looked at like last week, where there's a table of data and there's a bunch of rows in that table, just a bunch of entries in that table. And when I say attribute table, I mean this list, like the thing that looks like Excel. And each of these lines, rows they're called, is a different thing on the map. So if you right-click on any of these things and you say zoom to, it's going to bring you to a different pool. So you right-click again, you say zoom to, and it's going to keep popping me around the map because each one of those rows has a shape on the map. So when I say lines and points and polygons, polygons are these shapes things. If it was a point data set and I went and I zoomed to one of these, it would just be a dot on the map. And if it was a line, obviously it would just be one line. We'll bring in one of each of the types and then kind of symbolize them a bit, and then you guys can grab a layer of your own. And I think we'll just do this for homework. If we go grab another layer from another state website or something and do the same thing. And basically it'll be, we're going to go grab, like this is the core thing, right, is go search for data, actually find it, right, like I was able to do. download it, bring it into ArcMap, turn the background map on, symbolize the data in some way, right, and then take a screenshot, and you have like a basic map. So like some of the ways we'll learn to extend that are going to be like, well, how do you make a really nice map with all the stuff that goes around a map, at some point? How do you bring in a bunch of these like things at the same time and do things like label them on the map and do like special symbology and things, and yeah, so that'll be like for the first little while. I just want you guys to get comfortable with that, because once you can do that, then you can do all sorts of stuff. You can kind of have an idea and just go find something and take a look at it. It's pretty neat. So okay, we'll just start with a polygon, and this doesn't have much data, so it's not the greatest example, but I think. All right, so we at least have a few types of in this column here. SVP status. We have either straddler pool, significant, potentially significant, or not significant. So somebody's done some analysis to say something about these vernal pools, and that's part of it. So we're going to symbolize those pools by that, right? Because we want to say, well, it's not really helpful to see it in this table, but it would be helpful if all the significant ones were green and all the not significant ones were red. Then we could say, well, clearly, we only want to look at the green ones. Or we could say right away, the significant ones are all centered around Lewiston or something, some random place in Maine. So anyway, one of the things you can do when you have these tables or other windows open in ArcMap, when you start to move it, all these little arrows pop up, which will just let you dock it somewhere. So if you do this middle one, it'll dock inside the window. If you do this one, I guess those do the same thing. If you do it for the top and the bottom, it actually makes a difference. But anyway, one quick shortcut: if you hold the letter C. Oh, is it gonna not work for me? Yeah. Well, on your computers, if you hold the letter C, it will switch to pan, no matter what tool you had on. So like otherwise, you have to go click on the hand, and you have to click around to pan the map around. And then you have to click on the zoom out button and click on the map. But if you just hit the letter C, it would flip to the hand button so you could pan around, and then when you let go of it, it would go back to the zoom out button, which is actually kind of nice. But okay, so the first thing we want to do, if we're going to re-symbolize this, is maybe just only show the outline of this so we could see, since they're all overlapping here, like I can't really tell what's under it. So if I want to change the symbol of a polygon, I can just click on it, and it gives me this box. I have a bunch saved, but you'll see it'll kind of start here with all the default ESRI ones. I guess I usually just make my own most of the time. So if I want to make it hollow, I just change the fill color, and I do no color, and then we can see what that's going to look like. Not much, and it's going to be hard to see those outlines. So really, we want to change those outlines, maybe make them a thick fluorescent color, which always looks good on an air photo. So I'll make it like fluorescent blue. I'll just turn the outline width up. Great. So turns out that there was actually a few more pools there than I originally thought. The way that they're making this data, like it's not meant to represent like a lake. I'm sure it's like they found a pool and then they just did a circle based on like 100 feet around that pool or something like that. That's why they're all circles. But again, so we talked about we want to symbolize them now by category. So the way you do that is you can either double click on the name of the layer over here, or you can right click on it and say properties. It brings you to the same set of tools here. So I'm going to go to the Symbology tab, which is where we're just going to kind of stay for a little while. You can see on the left here, it's not readily apparent, but it starts off with single symbol, which if you go if you click on this box here, it'll bring you the same tools that you got when you clicked on the other one. This is called the table of contents over here, so I'll refer to that a lot. When I say in your table of contents, I mean in the list over there. And then if you click on the categories button, it actually brings up a whole bunch of different options that are actually more helpful. And then if you click on the quantities, it'll bring up more options, which we'll go into next. But anyway, the categories is for when you have a list of descriptions for things. You wouldn't use categories to say color it lighter or darker on some scale of, like, because it's a number, right? And you want to compare the different numbers. This is more, like we have in the SVP status. So what we can do is click on unique values under categories and then pick that SVP status field in the value field box and then just click all values or add all values. And you can see what it did. It gave us the 4 things that we noticed were in there, and it just gave them a color right off the bat. So one thing you can do is you're like, oh, well, darn it, I wanted only the outlines to be colored. I think this is going to work. We'll see. If you just change this one and you do what we did, you take the fill out and turn the outline up, and you make it fluorescent. And you hit OK, and then you hit add all values. Okay, so it applied it to all of the ones, but it didn't really do what I wanted it to do. With outlines for polygons, you have to do them one at a time. It's kind of annoying. But so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do for this one. I just double-clicked on the symbol, and it brought this up. So I'm going to take the fill out, and I'm going to make it fluorescent yellow. And then for this one, I'm going to take the fill out, and I'm going to make it fluorescent, like light orange. And for this one, same thing. It's not every day you're just doing outlines of polygons. But so then I hit OK. It turns out these are all significant, so they did not change color. It was much less dramatic. So let's see what these non-significant ones. It's weird. Not significant should be yellow. Oh, you know why? Because it's selected. So it's kind of just a concept to cover. A lot of this stuff I'm trying to cover early on is like the first questions that you get all the time. It's like, well, why was that blue, right? Well, it was blue because I had it selected, and when something is selected, it gets an outline in bright blue. So when it's not selected, which if you have something selected and you want to get rid of the selection, you can hit this button here on this one of these main data toolbars here. Remember I said the tools and the standard toolbar, which if you hover over its clear selected features, you can either do that, or you can click on this selection button. You can see if I click on it, it'll get selected. If I click off of it, it'll get unselected. We'll get used to this, and again, this is why we're going to do it. This is why I'm going to show you this, and then we're going to go through it together, and then, I mean, obviously a lot of this you're not going to be doing when you do it, but yeah, just to call it out. So, and the video is meant to, like, if you remember that we went over something, and you kind of remember where it was, you can kind of narrow down, exactly how to do it in the software with the video. Anyway. So, okay, cool. So I guess let's just look at one of these potentially significant. Is orange. And you can see all the different colors in the map. And if you zoom out a little bit. Great. So let's go grab another piece of data. And we'll just do a point next. All right, so again, we're out. Let's go to a different website. Okay, my favorite website is naturalearthdata.com. This is on the video that I showed. Yeah. Yep. Yes. not lying. So naturalearthdata.com is awesome. The way to interpret this is it helps you with the pictures, right? On the left side, it's data for maps that are really close in, and on the right side, it's data for maps that are kind of farther away. It does make a difference when it comes to GIS data because remember that the big data problem we have with the hurricanes? That's like a common problem because there's so much data that takes forever to draw, right? So what they do when you have a map at a global scale is that they reduce the detail in the GIS data, so it draws faster, basically. So it's just helpful to start there. Anyway, for us, we're gonna do the larger scale, which just means closer in, which always is backwards in my mind. Large scale is closer in. I don't know if it's backwards in your mind, but it's always been backwards in mine. You can imagine cultural is like political boundaries and like roads and things, and physical is like mountains and streams and things. So we'll do cultural. And we're just going to grab something that's a point. So this has country boundaries, and then sub-regions of countries, boundary lines, states and provinces, populated places. That's a good place to start. And then you just hit download. The other reason I like it, it's very simple, right? All I did is I got to 2 pages in and I hit download and it's giving me a zip file already. So we have done this a few times and you'll notice it all comes zipped. So if you didn't know zip files before, you'll get to know them now. So within the data folder, I'm going to make a new folder for natural earth data. And okay, my data is there. So okay, we'll go back to this to get our final data set here. So I'm going to, oh good, all right, great example. So now that folder I just made isn't showing up, right? So what I have to do is go somewhere above it and say refresh. And then if I go back into data, now I have my natural earth data folder. It's just easy to forget. So then I'm going to drag this in. When I drag it in, if I drag it all the way over here and I drop it on top, then it will go on top. Sometimes it will go below other things if I don't do that. Anyway. All right, so we'll turn off our pools for now. The button I'm hitting here is just, it's called fixed zoom out. So it just zooms out a little bit. You could also take the zoom out wand and just draw a small box and it kind of does the opposite, right? Like you draw a small box with the zoom out, it zooms out a lot. If you draw a small box with the zoom in, it zooms in a lot. It's kind of funny. Anyway, all right, so the reason I can't see the dots is because it's got a dark background, right? So let's use it as a reason to switch background maps here. Remember, it was in my GIS servers folder. And then I can pull in this Esri street map. Okay, so there's not many populated places in this data set. But basically, you could see those points for a second there. I'm just going to make these points bigger, and then we'll see if we can symbolize them by something. So I double click on the symbol and I just make them very big. And I tend to like this second and third row colors, but it's just me. Okay. So you can see just the bigger cities are on there. Still, that color doesn't look very good. Let's just do that. All right, here we go. So now let's look at the table again. And you can see a pattern emerging, right? Like the typical thing to do is when you bring your data in, look at the table. Because then it kind of tells you about what is in that data. So let's see. So for populated places, we have stuff like What type of point is it? I guess so there are some things that are just populated places and some things that are actually capitals of places. So Makoa, I don't know where that is. That is in Morocco or something. Let's see. So it also has the name of the place, and then it also has, oh, it's Colombia. It has the country. You'd be surprised how many different names a country or types of country type things there are. There's like a sovereignty, right? Like the United Kingdom. And there's a country like what? England within the United Kingdom, which gets complicated when you start looking at all this. Then you have all sorts of codes for countries. In this case, COL is Colombia. I'm hoping for population. Here we go. Okay, so within this file, we also have pop, max, and min, and other. I don't know why they have a pop, max, and a pop, min. Maybe it's the minimum, maximum estimate from what they guessed or there. But the good news is that we can use this number to symbolize our points in a different way. So the last time when we did this for polygons, we symbolized based on a category, right? Like a type of a thing. Now we're going to symbolize based on a number, like a value that means something. So let's see how to do that. So we'll do it on pop max. Great. So I double clicked on the name instead of right click properties. And then same thing, go to categories, or I'm sorry, go to quantities to deal with numbers. So we'll start with graduated symbols. We could do graduated colors, which would just be, you can see here, you know, if you had like a polygon, like countries, you know, you get a little picture of what it's going to do. It'll be like lighter is this and darker is this, and they call it a heat map sometimes. But for points, a lot of times the cooler ones are graduated symbols or proportional symbols. Let's just do proportional. I'll show you the difference. Let's do them both. All right, so graduated we'll start with. And for these, really all you got to do is click on that type, and then again, really the main thing you want to do is just pick the field that you're going to do this off of, right? So you do value is pop max. And of course, you know, there's more fields in there than we even started to look at. It's got population for every year, apparently. And then it's got some, I think these are, well, I don't know, doesn't matter. Anyway, let's just do, oh, there's the ones we want. Actually, I think pop 20 would be population in 2020, but all right, anyway, pop max. Okay, so I just clicked on that, and it already filled in everything for me. And if I just hit OK, you can see that some dots are bigger than others. If I go back here and I go to the template bubble, and I change it to a color that's easy to see on the world map, like yellow, now we get a cool map. Cooler, at least. So we can start to see which places have more people. Not many places in Africa. Oh, this is South America. Africa. I make maps in the U.S. Come on. All right, U.S. Okay, interesting, right? But now we're going to see the difference between graduated colors, which just means it puts it into 5 categories, right? I think it's pretty obvious what it did there. While we're here, I'm just going to show you a trick. So if you right-click on this and you say Format Labels, you can do number of, first of all, show thousands separators don't pad with zeros and do significant digits. You can just do 2, and this is just going to round it to the first 2 numbers. So you can see the numbers still stay the same, but now you have nice labels on them. So when you look at it here, you can say, all right, so this size dot has 2 million people to 5 million people. This size 5 to 12 million. It's just easier to see, just especially with the commas in there. So anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to rename this to be graduated. And then we're going to actually copy and paste it in the same table of contents. We're just going to symbolize this one differently. So this one's going to be proportional. And we're going to double click on it, and we're going to just flip it to proportional. And we're going to pick pop max again. And you can do appearance compensation. And let's just pick a bright color before we start. And okay. Okay, so now what happened was the difference between the smallest value and the biggest value is so big that the biggest value became enormous, right? So we have to make the smallest value much smaller, which just kind of happens with proportional sometimes. So we go into the min value box and we just make this like 0.1, 0.1. It started off as 2. And okay, still not small enough. So you have to go in and say 0.01. And this is just kind of a trick. Okay, now you can kind of start to see. So as you zoom in on this, let's go back to Maine, or the Northeast at least. See, obviously New York City is the biggest one. You can guess that that's Boston. Portland does not have many. Oops. If you ever zoom in somewhere you didn't mean to zoom in, you can hit this blue back arrow, and it will go back to where you were just looking. You can zoom in up here. Okay, so clearly quite a difference between the proportional and the graduated, but there's reasons to have both of them. But, you know, this is kind of just a tour through different things you typically would use. So let's talk about lines and then take a break. Let's think of another. Oh man, hurricane storm tracks would be great for lines. Let's do. Let's just get these roads, I guess. So you see here there's a couple of options for roads. There's one that's a North America supplement. It just means North America has much better data because, I mean, we can afford to pay people to create GIS data here. So other places it's not as much. So it's going to take a while to download that. So let's do something different. And let me see if physical has anything. Let's do rivers, I suppose. Ooh, I don't know what scale, ranks, and tapering is, but it sounds pretty neat. All right, we'll extract 2. Data. Natural Earth data. Okay. And we will go go to our folder, and it might not show up. All right, good. It didn't show up again. We got to refresh again, so it pops up. Rivers. And then if I click on the line, I have a preset. Oh, that's another thing to tell you about. So every time I make a custom symbol, so like these vernal pools, I made these boxes like outlines. Let's say this green one I really like, and I go into it, and I just made this thing, and I think it's fantastic. So I would hit Save As, and I don't give them names because they're visual. If you needed to give it a name, you could, but if you hit OK, then it will save it in your list here. So I could just put that there in that list. So if you ever make a nice one, it's always good to just save it immediately, because there's ways to spend a long time on making these things. Anyway. So here are your rivers. Obviously just the major rivers. So let's take a look at the table now that we brought it in. And let's see, it has I guess it has lake center lines in here along with rivers. Scale rank usually just means the size of the river, right? So that there's all sorts of sizes. I don't know what dissolve means. The name of the river. What you might want to label it. Okay. Let's do this two ways, right? So we showed what the proportional means for a point. Let's do proportional for a river. So quantities. And then, proportional. And we'll say scale rank. And if we zoom out, you can see these are, I think they're all just similar scale here. But you can see some are fatter than others. This might be a good opportunity to actually a graduated symbol is better. And then one thing you can do is change the number of classes it's in. So let's just make it 10 because there's only 10 of these classes. And change the template to nice bright yellow, or blue, I guess. Yeah, so these are all the same scale rivers. It's interesting. Well, I guess maybe the only scales they even showed on here were kind of bigger scales. Let's see if we exaggerate this a little bit. So what I did is I changed the top, the biggest one, and then when I clicked off of it, it recalibrated all the widths. So not really. I think most of them are just like scales 9 and 10. So that's one way to look at rivers. I think. Yeah, I guess that's really all I wanted to show you guys about that. And yeah, I'll just stop there unless